It is Thursday, March 13th, and I'm here in Stuttgart today with James Liu of Mercedes, and we're going to talk about the new CLA. This is the day the car is revealed, so I've got a lot of exciting questions. I'm super happy and excited about what I've seen. So James, welcome.
Thank you very much, Maren. Really appreciate being here.
I'm really excited you're on the show. As you know, I'm a big fan of EVs, and it's been kind of hard to see the evolution of EVs kind of stumbling a bit in the last few years, especially traditional car makers have had a hard time with software. You have made a great effort with MBOS. Mm-hmm. You created an entire building and team to develop this.
Yep.
And what I've seen so far with the E-Class and the previous EQ products, like EQS, EQE, has been very, very exciting. And so the CLA, you're kind of taking things a whole new dimension and a whole new direction. And that's what I want to talk with you about really briefly.
Absolutely.
So give us some context, right? Like for me, my audience is looking right now at, Tesla, for better or worse. There's a lot of problems with this Tesla right now. I'm an ex-Tesla owner.
Yeah.
I still love their products, but I'm reluctant to buy them for good reason. However, my audience still sees Tesla and the Chinese EVs and Lucid and Rivian kind of as leading the pack in terms of the user experience, the software experience. And so I know that with the investment you've made, obviously you're aware of that and you're kind of pushing in that direction. When you define what CLA, the platform, would be, kind of how did you, what were your targets and goals? Because software-defined vehicles, everybody's using that word. But the reality is there's very few cars out there that can be OTA'd fully, right?
Absolutely.
And because the CLA is also a platform that is a combustion platform as well, so it's a shared platform, I'm curious kind of like how you were able to step in and create a foundation for the software experience, the user experience, the hardware that supports the software to be able to do the things you wanted to do, which presumably were to kind of match some of that we're seeing with Tesla, Rivian,
absolutely,
and Lucid. So how did you get started? Like, how were you able to set those boundaries with the team?
Oh, man. Okay. I think the context, that's a big question because you really nailed it. I think, software-defined vehicle itself is it's a bit of a loose term. Let's call it that, right? I think it's almost a
everybody has a different idea.
Of what it is. But you really, the way I like to think about it is actually less about software. It's actually more about how does a company steer like a software company.
Right.
That's actually the most important aspect. So I'll get to your technology question, but I think the context of this is actually quite important, right? When you look at the tech startups, the EV startups, our Chinese competitors, these vehicles start from zero, to go to one, and they have their platforms basically designed from the ground up. And, the challenge we have as really these kind of traditional OEMs is we have a supply chain, we have all of our ECU components, we have multi-year deals and legacy.
Suppliers to deal with.
So really, the software design aspect of that is really the journey that we have been on, really since, I would say, 2018, all the way to now where we have finally, let's say, accomplished the capability of being able to flash every piece of software in the car.
Right. So that's the goal you've reached with CLA platform.
Correct.
So that's exciting.
That
gives you a big blank canvas, right?
Absolutely.
Then in terms of, I don't know how specific you can get about the hardware because I know partnerships are difficult, especially in the automotive space.
Yep.
On smartphones, everybody tells us what CPUs they're using.
Sure.
But give us an idea of how much space you have going forward in terms of hardware to implement some of the features that these cars are going to be on the road for, a decade or something, right?
Absolutely.
So you need a bit of headroom is what I was looking for.
Absolutely.
What choices were you able to make there, and were you able to make these choices? Because the CLA is going to be an affordable car too, right? So there's obviously the constraint of cost here.
Yeah, good question. We have the latest Qualcomm chip actually inside the vehicle.
Okay, great.
But again, I think this is where, going back to software-defined vehicles, we're going to go out the door to CLA now. We're going to use every headroom we have, obviously, to basically power the experience.
Right.
But of course, our ability to then update the software, improve our overall performance, that's part of the journey, I think, of the software-defined vehicle.
Right.
Because it's not just about, hey, one time we hit SOP and we're done. No. It's about, okay, we got this out the door. Okay, we, like all companies, of course, we have to make trade-offs to say, hey, performance versus feature. But now what we're the most excited about, and the teams that we've built here, is now we can iterate. Historically, if you look at traditional companies, even with, going back to just even the E-Class, which we launched a couple of years ago, we didn't have full control of that stack.
And I know that. That's kind of what I was asking you, because, I know that there's what you want to do, and then there's the constraints of reality of manufacturing, supply chain, cost, working with suppliers, right? And so obviously if you start from scratch completely as a company like some of these Chinese manufacturers have, or, the 3 startups in the US, it's a lot easier, right? But now even Tesla now is starting to have a legacy, right? In terms of their architecture and their platform, right?
Yeah, and you have to have different hardware updates. Okay, I have to, the promises we made in the past, can we fulfill it in the future?
So the new MBOS is obviously now the full enchilada of MBOS, right? Because I know that in E-Class you only kind of doing part of it, because now you are doing everything. You got like the ADAS is all of it. It's not just the motor control, everything software defined. Now, of course, the end user doesn't see any of that, but they feel it. They feel the way the motors are tuned. They feel the way the BMS operates when they charge, and they see the charging performance, right? And so what I'm more interested in finding out is with MBOS, like the actual in-car experience, the infotainment, the ADAS, etc. Like how, what were you able to do with CLA that you couldn't do with EQ before? And kind of like, I've seen some of the things you showed at the various tech summits you've had, but I'm kind of curious, like what can Mercedes customers that get this vehicle when it comes out expect and look forward to? That's new.
It's a big question. But again, I think we have quite a lot of examples. Let me hit the first point about what's different about our software-defined vehicle journey, right? So going back to the E-Class, the E-Class, we really had, frankly, one computer, one ECU, the infotainment system, which we developed end-to-end.
Right.
We didn't yet really have full control over body controller or the ADAS stack. A concrete example here for the CLA, one of our big features is surround navigation. Right. Surround navigation. And just in the process of developing that, as any software engineer will know, you find out that you have throughput issues.
Right.
Oh, I'm not getting enough signal actually coming out. I can't actually process all the objects that we need to see in the vehicle. In the old days, that's a phone call to a supplier.
Right.
When can you deliver something? Oh, let's wait. And maybe we flash something in a fresh up, 3 years from now.
Right. And then to bring your car to the dealer.
Bring the car to the dealer.
That component wasn't designed to be OTA. Exactly. And it's a mess.
Yeah. And even in that little tiny example, right, where we, of course, ran into those issues. How do we get more throughput? Instead of a phone call to a supplier, we turn around to the guy next to us and say, hey, let's get our interfaces updated. Let's figure out how to get more throughput in the system. And then now we can show more objects and really create that more sense of safety for the customer. And you can see very easily, you drive in an E-Class, and it's a wonderful car. Please go buy an E-Class. I'm not saying it's not a wonderful car, but you drive around and like a lot of these, let's say, more traditional first ADAS systems, you see a couple of objects around you.
Yeah,
right? And you see a car, these level 1 systems you see the car that you're following, basically. You are in the CLA, you go to, you're stuck in a traffic situation, and you see every vehicle out there. And even something as simple as that, like those are the features that we can unlock in our software development process. Another good example, I think, is our speech system, right? And that's definitely not Mercedes-Me, but the Mercedes virtual assistant.
Oh, the assistant, yeah.
Yeah, and this is both and again, to enable a speech system, we have to, as a manufacturer, as a vehicle manufacturer, we have to worry about both the connected and the disconnected use cases. So when you're not connected, you're driving in a tunnel, you're in New Mexico somewhere, speech still has to work.
Yeah.
So we need embedded systems as well as cloud systems.
Right.
And what's really new with the CLA is we built a cloud and embedded multi-agent system. which allows us to really plug in some of the best LLMs that are,
Right.
I will call them suppliers, but they really are tech companies
Oh, yeah.
can offer.
Yeah.
So working with Google for navigation, because of course they provide the data for the APIs for Places API, and we can leverage their LLM to help us basically create a conversational experience. And we can leverage Microsoft OpenAI to use their models to answer general questions of knowledge. And it's because we have that architecture, we can define it in the full vehicle, we can bring that experience to the customer.
You make a good point about the offline aspects of it, and I think that the new LLMs, some of them obviously, especially with Qualcomm, can run on device very easily without connectivity. You slightly downgraded, but generally not noticeably bad.
Absolutely.
I mean, unless you need some real-time data.
Yeah.
But my question is, there's kind of two approaches philosophically around the in-car user experience, the software experience, right? And I'm talking like the whole thing, but mostly infotainment. And that's projection versus native, right? I'm a big proponent of native. I don't like projection. You don't log in to you don't project your iPhone to your laptop or your iPad to your
log into
laptop. You log into your Apple account and you get all your data. So now you can't obviously do that because Apple is going to control that. But Google, for example, lets you do that. We've seen some Android automotive-based systems that basically embrace all of the Google stuff. Now you're using Google's map data and POI data. That's a different thing. But that's kind of what intrigued me about MBOS when it was announced 2 years ago, is that you're trying to create your own complete ecosystem, but integrate with all the external services, whether it be Tidal or, whatever for the Dolby Atmos stuff, because right now it's the only thing. Well, there's Apple Music as well. That's possibly coming or something. But the point I'm making is that, based on my kind of perspective of projection is kind of a short-term solution, and long-term, we should be going to native systems, and each manufacturer can provide something really solid.
Right.
How are you doing that right now, and what can you integrate? Because, obviously, like I noticed that you don't have Google integration to the extent where it knows my Google Calendar yet. You're missing a few things like that, right? For example, you don't have my search history in Google Maps.
Correct.
Because you're not using that, right? Obviously, the car can create its own history, and it also learns and it adapts to you over time, and that's all great. But I think most users are going to look at it as like, I want to be able to log in with as many services as I can and kind of have the infotainment system kind of connect all that data into one big sauce, right? And of course, you only get that sauce in the car, right? Because when you're using your Android phone or whatever, you only get the Google sauce, right? So how do you make it so that that sauce still tastes good? Well, it's such a mix of things. And also, more importantly, how are you going to integrate some of these features? Because here's the thing, right? The baseline has been set by, again, Tesla and the Chinese manufacturers like Xiaomi, for example, with their ecosystem, and Huawei with their ecosystem, where you basically some table stakes have been set. Like phone, the phone in your pocket is your key, that the phone has access to your information, passes on to the car. That's one approach, which actually works pretty well. Because, Tesla doesn't let you log in with Google, yet they see your calendar and they see your text and they see, your search history, because you can send your Google Maps searches to the Tesla app and then it goes to the car. So I'm kind of wondering, like, where you guys see yourselves. You do that too. And I think that's the other thing, right? Like, the critical thing is that you want ultimately to be able to integrate all this stuff, but right now you need to deliver to the customer what they see on other platforms, right? So how do you kind of like balance that? Because it's a lot of work on either side.
No,
right?
absolutely. I think there's a lot to unpack there. I think the key thing is like we offer customers choice. You use projection mode, CarPlay, Android Auto, fantastic.
Great, it's there.
Great, it's there. You can use it. Good experience.
You're renting a car. This might be the best solution.
It's fantastic. And even for us, especially again, let's call it our legacy cars as well. Fantastic solution. We've had it for years, and we generally find that customers mostly use it for media apps.
Okay.
Spotify, and of course, I think that what you're talking about is that lack of friction.
Exactly.
And that lack of friction where your personal device kind of travels everywhere, like it's of course it's real and it's good for the customer. So I personally, and in the our company, there's a reason why we still have that choice for the customer. We don't believe in taking away that choice. Now, I think as you're saying, when it comes to integrating the ecosystem, that creates more work for us, for the customer, And it's really a balance of, is it worth it? What's the trade-off? What are we trying to do for the customer? And I do think, for me personally, and how I like to think about it, I think of the car, I don't really think of the car really as a personal device. It's really a communal device.
Correct.
It's actually more like a television, if you will.
Yeah.
Right. And it's when you have multiple people sitting in the car, it's a shared device. We talk to each other. A lot of people call this like ambient computing. That paradigm of ambient computing, I think, is actually the right one for us.
I agree. I love it.
Yeah, and again, you have that with the multiple microphones in the car. We have the immersive experience with sound, 4D sound. Like that's the experience we're trying to create. So, to me, I think this idea of we need to capture every customer's endpoint so that we can capture their data and then sell them ads and things like that, that's not who we are, right? And that's really the reason why we didn't take, and I love Google, we work with them very well, but we made a very specific choice not to just integrate a standard Google navigation. Right. Because, hey, we want to ensure, and our customers expect, that we take care of their privacy, that all of the data never gets shared with third-party partners. And we take that very seriously as a company. And that's what makes us a Mercedes-Benz. Right. So I think that it's going to be a balance, of course. And the ecosystem's time keeps changing. Android Automotive, from like what the ecosystem was and the business conditions around that ecosystem 5 years ago is completely different today. So I think, again, to me, there's no right answer. It's actually really about how do we be more dynamic. Right. And how do we make the right choices year over year? And that, I think, is what I'm excited about, because you look at the Xiaomi and things like that. It's, you see that a company like Xiaomi, which is a great vehicle, kind of already point to, okay, can we have a full ecosystem? But even there, I think you still see some seams. Right, like you launch an application and you have their version of video on the side. It's like, sure. Oh, okay. But again, I think that's the exciting thing about the industry right now is we get to learn all of this together, right? And us as a traditional OEM now having the capability as a software-defined vehicle, I'm really looking forward, and I hope the customers will look forward to all the cool stuff we're going to bring out.
I'm excited about it. What I've seen so far is really cool. I think what I'd love to know and see in action is very quick iteration and quick updates when customers, they want camp mode. Let's make that happen very quickly.
Yes.
Now that you have that platform, because I think that's the big challenge is that they're seeing their experiences, again, I know a lot of people are leaving Tesla. I did. But then we go to another car and I'm like, oh, I can't do this.
Can't get my
I can't do that.
Right.
And so, why can't I, right? Like, it doesn't matter how the details of it matters to you and me how the details of the implementation, but the average driver doesn't or passenger doesn't care, right?
Yes.
And that's why, for example, like one day I'd love to be able to say to my Mercedes assistant, when's the next Lakers game added to my calendar? Yeah. Just like I do with my phone. Right. Google just introduced that, actually. It's that feature. So I'm like, do you think that one of the workarounds, since projection is kind of a shorter term thing and it's kind of hard to create your own ecosystem because you have to integrate with so many different logins from so many different services right now, do you think that an alternative would be for your voice assistant to, via Bluetooth, ask my voice assistant on my phone for the results it needs and then reintegrate them into the car or something?
Oh, it's really funny.
Because as we're going more towards a voice interaction model, I'm wondering if that's kind of the way to go.
No, you're talking about basically agent to agent.
Yeah, agent to agent,
right?
Exactly.
I mean, it's a.
You can do it now. That's the best part.
I think there's a couple interesting things there, right? Like you are in the older days. Let's say, okay, well, what the agent ecosystem I think is really pointing to is that language is the new API.
Yep.
Right. So we no longer have to, we have to do a Google integration. Now we have to build an app and we have to get our APIs connected. Now the universal API is language. Right. Yep. And that's, you're absolutely right. I think there's a lot of excitement, a lot of, and us too, very excited really exploring that space. Mm-hmm. So, we solved an agent to agent communication in our car already. Right? We have a Google agent, we have a Microsoft agent, and our car has context, has a wide context when it remembers what you're saying to both agents.
Right.
And I think that's actually one of our strengths now. Okay. As again, going back to the whole ambient computing platform, is we're not locking our customers into the ecosystem. And I fully believe like what you're saying, that the app paradigm is now shifting more and more to that agentic paradigm.
For sure.
And the new business models will come. We still need to authenticate. We have to figure all those things out. But ultimately, I think it'll be fine. And so again, I think in some ways, I think these communal devices, as opposed to these personal devices where you stick your head in a gobble. Apologize. I
feel very much the same as you.
It's really where I think we will go. Which again, what makes a Mercedes and our work so exciting for our team is that we really get to play with that space.
Do you foresee a point? I think this is a very positive, message that we can end with. And I think, could you see a point where every person that interacts with a Mercedes vehicle kind of has its own bubble of data in the Mercedes ecosystem that can be detected via some kind of authentication and then reappear obviously in another vehicle or another context?
Yeah.
Because I think that's what's going to be critical. The kind of knowledge graph of the agents is going to travel with you, right?
Yeah.
Because your phone's pretty simple. Everything's on your phone, right? Your laptop has a little bit of it was on your phone, maybe. But like as we're moving forward with this more agentic kind of setup, I think I see a point where you're a Mercedes driver, but maybe you're renting another Mercedes somewhere else. But two other Mercedes drivers are with you. So now there's like a magic little sauce, as we were talking earlier, of the three of your agents graphs kind of talking to each other. And
it's a great question. I don't think anyone's quite solved that yet. I think if anybody solved that, I would love to invest in their company. But you really have to separate out when you're talking about things like user data. You really have to separate out, when you think about personalization, right? Like personal data from context. Yeah. Right. And of course, from a personal data perspective, like we have, like every country has a different set of laws. Basically, Europe, like as we are today, GDPR puts some very strong regulations, and rightfully for that.
No, it's very important.
Very important.
Yeah.
And, also in China, same thing. We're even seeing stricter consumer protection there. So I think being able to split and separate what is considered context versus personal data is actually going to be a very interesting, let's call it unlock, between how do you do context carryover between the agents. Because what you don't want is, like I can imagine a dystopian world where you're walking around and every agent all of a sudden knows who I am. Yeah. Right? We don't want that. No. But we know that you can have really, I think, magical experiences, really intuitive experiences, if it's that context that moves with you. And I think that's the stuff we're interested in. We're thinking about. We're trying to solve some of those problems, and hopefully we see more and more of that development. And I think that's the next wave that we're going to have to deal with.
I'm excited because I kind of feel like the car industry is potentially the first one that can unlock that stuff because of that shared device thing, right?
You're trapped in the car with us.
Back in 20 years ago, the whole personal area network thing. You watch your smart ring and your phone would talk. But it was so beyond that now, right? And now having that shared experience, whether it's the television or the car, I think is...
It's like we used to... I don't want to live in a future where like our goal is to get as many screens between you and me. Right. And, in our vehicle, and I think we're being very thoughtful with our car. Yes, it has screens, but we're using them in a way that fits the customer. Right. And we're trying to deliver a safe experience and really creating that immersive experience in a cocoon that you can't get anywhere else. So I'm totally with you.
Very comfortable.
Very comfortable cocoon. Very comfortable.
Well, listen, James, thanks so much for your time. This has been really insightful. I appreciate you chatting with me. Good stuff. I'm looking forward to driving the CLA at some point. So stay tuned, folks. Thanks, James.
Thank you very much.